right, welcome guys. Welcome to Corner Class Tampa 6. We have a couple more people joining, so let's give it a couple of minutes and then we'll start. All right, hope everyone's doing well.
Yes.
Good. So we have a couple more minutes. I know that they had a couple of people that were interested in joining. They sent me some information. We're gonna get started here in about 2 minutes. While we're waiting, I guess I can tell you guys about my my trip to Puerto Rico. Went to Puerto Rico this weekend, and here's the funny thing: is that the going from Tampa to Puerto Rico, we were concerned here in Tampa, saying, "Oh, Puerto Rico, virus, you're gonna catch something." But when I went to Puerto Rico, and I was talking to the guys there, it was like, "Oh, you're from Tampa, no, you got the virus, type of deal." So it's interesting that how no matter where you located, you have a different perspective. The people in Puerto Rico was concerned about the people in Tampa infecting them, and the people in Tampa. Hold on a second, we have someone. And the people in Tampa is like, my team is concerned about me going to Puerto Rico. In fact, Sydney, who is my videographer, chickened out. She didn't even go. And Sydney, you got anything to say? You can't see her. She's off camera, and she chickened out. But I had a great time. I had a little work, a little play, and so it was really a good time. We have 1 more minute, and then we're going to start with introductions, and then I'll just let everyone who's running a little late, I'll just add them to the room, and we'll continue on where we started. Okay. All right, welcome to Corner Class Tampa 6. This is our 6th entry into training. It's a master class where we provide 100% content. Remember, we have a couple of ground rules here where there's no selling, there's no spamming, and there's no soliciting. What that means, guys, is that if you want any additional information from the expert contributors, I had them submit there. If you look in the chat bar, which is if you're not sure where you go, it's at the bottom. Your toolbar at the very bottom, there's a little bubble that says chat. If you click on that, you'll see their contact information. If you have any questions about the corner class, anything that we put in the corner class, or you need additional information, please feel free to reach out to the expert contributors. They're not going to solicit you. So if you want information from them, you reach out to them, and then they'll be able to help you. Again, there's no soliciting, there's no spamming, and so we are not going to, I just want to emphasize, we're not going to reach out to you. We need you to reach out to them if you have any questions, or you can ask the questions right here in this class. Questions that can be answered is 2 ways. You can go use your chat bar, which is at the little bubble at the bottom. Just type it to everyone. Whatever question you have, or you can send it directly to me, or you can when doing the question and action sessions, you can just unmute yourself and ask the question. I think that everyone is kind of comfortable with asking questions as you go. I know Gilbert is. Elana, is it okay if the attendees ask questions as you presenting, or you want to wait till the end?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And then there's so you can ask questions as the presentation is presented, and then at the end of the class, of course, we'll have 5 minutes or so to answer any questions and do a little kind of a wrap up. All right. If there's any questions to this point, I know that we have a couple more people joining. Any questions to this point? Perfect. All right. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is David Carmena. Carmena Enterprises. We are a full service all real estate related company. We do property management, we do new construction, training, and my purpose, my really, it's my passion, is to help people join get more of the American dream and learn how to make money through real estate. Learn how to be a real estate investor, or help you with purchasing your own home, or just basically get into the real estate game. So for the last 6 corner classes, we've had various topics. Capital, we talked about capital for a couple of training sessions. We talked about finding the deal. We talked about wholesaling. And today we're going to talk about starting your own business. Elana is going to cover everything that you need to, at least the beginning steps of what you need to do to start a business in real estate, or a business in general. But there were a couple of people that asked about capital. So Gilbert, if you can introduce yourself, and then cover a couple of minutes about any updates in the market. I know there's some conversation about the PPP loans and other opportunities that are now available because of COVID, and then anything about the market in general, the capital market.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me good, David?
I can hear you good.
All right. I'm Gilbert Bennett with Mighty's Mortgage. We're a small mortgage brokerage firm here in Tampa. What we focus on generally is primary residence and residential funding. So primary, second home, investment property, using whether it be bank statements, debt service coverage loans, standard qualifying methods. We do standard and what's called ALT-QM, or alternate qualifying method. And alternate qualifying can be anything from, like I just mentioned, bank statements for your business or person for the last 12 months, sometimes profit and loss statement audited by a CPA, sometimes just the debt service coverage on the property that you would be purchasing as an income property. So if you're buying a duplex and it rents for $2,000, as long as your payment's less than $2,000, you can generally get a loan on that home at, say, 25% down. So the markets right now are opening up a little bit. We really had a real squeeze on that secondary or alternate QM financing happened during the I would say height of the COVID crisis, but apparently we back there. So, but at the initiation of the COVID crisis,
continual rise.
At the initiation of the COVID crisis, those markets froze up, but they are coming back. We're seeing more debt service coverage. We're seeing better ratios being allowed, up to 20% instead of 30 or 35 that was being required for a short time. So it's eligible and available, and different funding opportunities are available through that. And I always preach, when you're looking for real estate, is find the cheapest way to finance what you're looking to finance, right? So find the lowest cost or cheapest way to finance what you're looking to do. Sometimes that is using the use of a mortgage. Sometimes it's use of a line of credit. Sometimes it's use of a different means that we talked about. So I know we're going to cover other topics in the future, but one topic we might cover in terms of finding investment property is that taking loans or taking properties subject to the existing mortgage. So that might be a good topic for the future, understanding that. I'm going to open it up to any questions you might have on capital. And then I have a question for Elana as well related to business that I'm going to put in the chat bar that she can respond to it later on.
All right. So, yeah, Gilbert, I think that's a really good idea, is that to have the a subject to, because that is a great way to get, to invest in real estate without, a lot of money coming out, if any money coming out your pocket. And there's a couple little nice things that we can do with that. Elana, so let me, all right, I got to be honest with you guys. I believe in being transparent and honest. We go to the same church. I've known her for a very long time, from church. And when I was thinking about starting a a larger enterprise and I needed to set up a holding company, I reached out to her and say, hey, listen, can you help me out? And so she is actually my lawyer. She's actually set up all of the Carmena Enterprises companies. I trust her. I think that, well, I trust her with everything, considering that she set it up and say, David, sign this. So, a great person, very knowledgeable. Alana, could you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and go ahead and go into your presentation? And again, guys, if you have any question about anything that we covered so far, please feel free to put it in the chat bar or just, unmute yourself and ask the question. All right, go ahead, please.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Elana, Greenway Faniel, and I'm a business attorney. And like David said, I'm his attorney and help him with everything dealing with Carmena Enterprises Incorporated. And today I'm going to discuss business formation as it relates to real estate investments. But if you have any questions about business formation in general, I'm here to answer those questions as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get into my presentation because I'm going to dig a little deeper into my background once I get into it. So I'm going to share my screen. Well, let me share it first. Okay. And then I'll answer your question. Gilbert's question. I have a question to start off with. If you have a business registered in a different state that exists and has existed for a while, what would the method be to register with Florida, a company that exists elsewhere? So if you started your business in another state and you want to operate here in Florida, you just register as a foreign business, like if it's a foreign LLC or foreign corporation, you just register to do business here, and then it's similar process to what you had to go through when you registered in the state that you're actually incorporated in. So it's a foreign registration here in the state of Florida. Let me know if that answered your question or if you need any other information. All right, I'm gonna go. Oh, you gotta let me share my screen, David. Okay. So I put together a little presentation on business formation as it relates to real estate investments. Again, you see my name here, and my law firm is Greenway Law Firm. Greenway is my maiden name, by the way. But so I kept my maiden name and my firm name. But today we're going to discuss whether you need to form a business when you're thinking about investing in real estate property, what type of business is the best form that you should create. And then I'm just going to go over briefly 2 case studies of how to structure that specifically. So a little bit about myself. I am from Tampa. I don't know, if we have people who are outside of Tampa here, but I'm a Tampa native, went to Hillsborough High School, and went off to Florida State undergrad, and I actually have a background in fashion design and criminology. I'm a free spirit. I have different interests, and so I explored those in undergrad. I went on to Howard University School of Law in Washington, D.C., and then in 2017, I actually formed my own law firm. I was working previously at another firm, decided to go out on my own, and now I service businesses really exclusively. I work with businesses, people forming businesses, people maintaining businesses, and I also specialize in intellectual property. Trademarks and copyrights, registering them, enforcing them, and I have some entertainment clients as well that I service. So I wanted to know a little bit more about the people that we have here. I don't know, David, did they filled out something that said what their interests were or where they are as far as whether they're a beginner or an expert
Right.
in real estate investment. So I wanted to get some information about that, but I don't think I can see what the responses are while I'm sharing my screen. So if you want to put in the chat a little bit about yourself, as far as your interests go, you can do that, and I'll take a look at it after I stop the share.
So, yeah, just a couple. I was able to read a couple of profiles and surveys, and then so most of the people in the room are beginners into the real estate field. There's no seasoned or advanced person in the room, at least according to their questionnaire. Most of the people here are interested in just the basic of starting your own business and maybe from a liability point of view, and then there was a couple of people that was a capital, like I said, mentioned some capital, wanted to learn more about financing a deal, and that's something that Gilbert kind of addressed. And I'm reading one now. We have a lady that basically says, confirmed that she's a beginner and has always had an interest in real estate. So most of the room is are beginners.
Okay, great. I think I see the chats now. I figured out how to I figured out how to use it. Okay, now I'm back in the game. All right, so next slide. The first question is whether you need to form a business. Short answer is yes, absolutely. And the reason being because of this little big thing called liability. And liability, according to Black's Law Dictionary, which is the authority on legal definitions, is liability is the quality or state of being legally obligated or accountable. It's a legal responsibility to another, enforceable by civil remedy or criminal punishment. So usually it's enforceable by civil remedy, meaning you're obligated to do something, and if you don't, there's going to be consequences. So what you want to do in forming a business is avoid liability. Well, you want to avoid liability personally. So your company is going to be liable and not you personally. You don't want to have a situation where something happens and they're able to go after your personal assets, garnish your wages and go after anything that you own personally. You want the company to be the one that is taking on that liability and not you yourself. And so I wanted to address at the bottom, operating as a sole proprietor or having a DBA. You can start a business, quote, without forming, a legal entity, but you are still taking on that liability personally. Even having a DBA does not shield you from personal liability. I think of DBAs as essentially a brand name. I deal with brands, trademarks all the time, and that's what I see a DBA as, a brand name that's owned by, usually a company. And maybe they have a different product line, maybe they have another group of services that they want to branch off. So they might form a DBA and operate under that DBA. But even in operating under that DBA, liability, you are still liable for any claims, debts that come along as you're operating. Zenobia said, is a sole proprietor the same as an LLC? Absolutely not. A sole proprietor is just, someone who starts providing services or selling something. If you wake up one morning and, you want to start selling lemonade, you're a sole proprietor. But you have no protection. You have no shield of liability whatsoever. You're just operating as a sole proprietor. So it's always best to, form a legal entity so that you are shielded from liability. So I wanted to go into what those liabilities kind of look like. One of the big ones is claims, especially I deal with claims. I have dealt, I won't say in a past life because it wasn't that long ago, but a couple years ago I was doing personal injury work. So, so I know all about, claims against companies for, say, slip and falls and things of that nature. That's one of the things, that's one of the liabilities or the risks that you have when you own, property, is that, someone could slip and fall on the property. Even if someone trespasses while there's construction, there's still duties that you have as the owner, and you want to be shielded from those types of claims. You don't want to have to pay out $100,000 judgment because someone slipped on your property. You want your business, the legal entity, to be the one that, say, pays out a judgment or whatnot. You do not want to take on that personally. There's breach of contract claims. Say, a contractor is complaining about something. You don't want that contractor coming after you personally. As the owner of that property, you want your business to shield you from, those types of claims. And then the other claim is negligent acts of owners. It's maybe not as applicable, in real estate as far as, negligent acts of owners, but other owners can bind the company to certain contracts and things. And, if you have some, another owner, a co-owner who's going rogue and binding the company to a contract that you didn't agree with and whatnot, again, you do not want to be paying off, a claim because the co-owner, did something that you didn't agree with. So form a business, form a legal entity so that you are shielded personally from liability. Of course, you have debt associated. That's a big, liability, mortgages, loans, tax liabilities, those kinds of things that are associated with real estate ownership. And you do not want to take on, those personally. And then other obligations. It could be services that are owed. You've promised, say you're a property manager and you promise to do certain things. You don't want to be operating as a sole proprietor, as a property manager. Something happens and then they're coming after you personally. So there's many, many, many liabilities associated with owning, real estate property, and you want to make sure that there is, that guardrail, that shield from liability, and you will get that in forming a business. Any questions? Any questions?
So break it down is that if you're not formed correctly, they can come after you, your house, your car, your dog, all of that, right?
Well, maybe not your house. I know in Florida, there's the Homestead Act, and they can't come after, creditors can't come after your house, but there may be other things they can, come after. They could potentially garnish your wages. If you have other businesses, they could potentially come after those. It depends. I'm not a collections, attorney, but I'm sure they get pretty creative in how they can come after you personally. So it's best to have a business, like I said, that's the shield, and it acts as a shield, and you're operating through the business so that you're not taking on those liabilities personally. All right. So what type of business works best? Short answer is an LLC, limited liability company. I'm going to go into why that is, but that's the short answer. That's basically the most flexible and best type of legal entity that you can use when operating and owning a piece of property. So I'm just going to briefly go over the different types of business entities in Florida, really briefly, because most of them are not really applicable. So, and this is not an exhaustive list. There's other types like, nonprofits and other special purpose types of organizations. But generally you have, partnerships, the different types of partnerships in Florida. You have professional organizations here, which I'm not going to go over, but like, for instance, my law firm is a professional organization. And then you have corporations and limited liability companies. I'm going to go into a little deeper the differences and the pros and cons of having a corporation versus an LLC. So we'll get into that. Gilbert saying, is it possible to form a partnership of one? Asking because 1065 return is what we want clients to file. Okay, I'm not a tax attorney. Let me just say that. So you cannot have a partnership of one. A partnership is two or more, either individuals or entities, operating a business together. So it can't be just one person. That is not a partnership. But you can be taxed as a partnership if you are the owner of, if you are the sole owner of an LLC. If there's two owners of an LLC, you can be taxed as a partnership. If you are the only owner of an LLC, the IRS considers you a disregarded entity, and you're basically taxed as a sole proprietor. So I don't know exactly the 1065 return, who that is for, but yeah, that would be my answer, is that you can't have a partnership of one, but you can be taxed as a partnership, even if you own an LLC. So general and limited liability partnerships, just generally speaking, these are not the best legal entities to form to own and operate real estate property. But I just wanted to go over them just so that you have a general knowledge of partnerships. So the general partnership, it's really not the best way to operate a business at all. I'm not even sure why they even still have general partnerships. But you do have that pass-through taxation, which means the partnership the revenue of the partnership is not taxed. The income that's generated by the partners is taxed. So it passes through to the partners, and they have to file that on their individual tax returns. And then general partnerships aren't great either, because you're still personally liable for the debts, obligations, and claims of the partnership. A limited partnership is not really used as much either. There's a general partner, and the general partner takes on the liability. They may get paid a management fee. They're usually a corporation or some other type of business entity that's well funded. And then the limited partners, they're not personally liable, but they usually do not take part in the management of the business. So basically they act as investors. But there's a pass-through taxation as well. The revenue of the partnership is not taxed. Each partner, the income that they claim on their individual tax returns is taxed. The best type of partnership is a limited liability partnership, where partners are liable for the debts and obligations of the partnership. You share in the profits and the losses, but they're not liable for the negligence or misconduct of other partners. So this type of partnership is used usually in professional settings, when you have a group of accountants, group of lawyers, group of doctors, that sort of thing, because they don't want to take on the liability associated with I guess the liability that comes with having those types of licenses, right? You could be sued for malpractice, for instance. And so those other partners do not want to have to take on that type of liability. All right, so we're going to get into now differences between corporation versus LLC, because that's usually the question that I get. Should I form a corporation or should I form an LLC? Corporation sounds good. You know, it sounds more legit. It sounds more official, you know, corporation versus an LLC. But you may want to, for your purposes in real estate investment, you're going to want to go with the LLC. But let's first talk about the liability portion. So as far as liability goes, for both a corporation and an LLC, you know, a corporation has shareholders. Those shareholders are the owners of, you know, the business, and so those shareholders are not exposed to personal liability. The same with an LLC. So an LLC, those owners are called members, okay? And so members are not, exposed to personal liability either. So on the liability side, it looks pretty good. But then we get into the next part as far as flexibility. Let me move this screen here. Okay. As far as flexibility, a corporation, there's not much flexibility when it comes to, management, when it comes to the maintenance, compliance of a corporation. There are many formalities associated with having a corporation. You know, you have to have an annual meeting, you have to maintain your books and records, and the corporation is managed by a board of directors. That board makes decisions. And you have to have a board. And you have to distribute shares to shareholders as well. So there's many requirements and formalities that come with, you know, owning a corporation. And so if you're looking for, you know, a more flexible route where there's not as much paperwork and requirements, you want to go with an LLC. There's more flexibility. You can choose how an LLC will be managed, meaning you don't have to have a board of anything. You know, you could be the only owner, or you and your partner could be the owners, and you choose how you want to manage, you know, the company. If you want to have an annual meeting, you can. You don't have to, you know, but it's always still good as far as maintaining books and records. Whatever type of entity you have, whatever type of business you're running, you want to maintain books and records. You know, you want to make sure that your finances are in order. You want to make sure that, you know, every transaction is recorded, and that kind of thing. Any decisions that are made by the owners, you know, you want to make sure that they're written down, because if you don't comply with, you know, just a bit of requirements that an LLC has, somebody could come along and what's called pierce the corporate veil, or the veil. What that means is, you know, you you have an LLC, you have it formed, it's registered, it's valid, but you're not really operating it like an LLC should be run. You know, you're operating it like it's your personal, you know, hobby money maker, you know, kind of a either like a shell company or a ghost company, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you're documenting everything, that you're abiding by whatever organizational documents that you do have, and that, you know, you just maintain that organization. As far as management goes, like I said, a corporation is managed by a board of directors. An LLC can be managed by members. The members are the owners. It can also be managed by managers. So the managers are, you know, act in the same way as a board of directors would in a corporation. So, you know, say if you have a group of people, and you want, you know, a certain group to be the decision makers, and you only want a certain group of those owners to just have an ownership interest, and maybe they can vote, or maybe you don't want them to have voting power, then you could have a manager managed LLC. So it's up to you, but it's great that you have that flexibility with an LLC that you don't have with a corporation. And the last part is the taxation piece. Again, I am not a tax attorney, But a corporation is taxed twice. If they are taxed as a C corp, their income is taxed at the corporate level, and then the shareholders are also taxed. The income or the dividends to the shareholders are taxed. As an LLC, you can be, I mentioned it before, but if you are the sole owner of an LLC, you're taxed as a sole proprietor. You know, you're a disregarded entity in the IRS's eyes. I mean, you still exist, you know, you still exist in the state of Florida, but as far as tax purposes go, the IRS does not distinguish between you and your LLC. They just tax, you know, you just claim your income on your personal taxes. If you have more than one owner, you have you can either elect to be taxed as a partnership and have that pass-through taxation that I talked about when I talked about partnerships, or you can elect to be taxed as an S corp. And so when you're taxed as an S corp, you're essentially being taxed at the corporate level. So sometimes if people don't want, you know, the income from, or the, you know, the dividends that are paid from, you know, their LLC, they don't want that on their personal returns. They might want, you know, the LLC to be taxed as an S corp, so that the company is taxed and not, and, you know, and it doesn't pass through to their personal tax returns. But there's special requirements in order to elect to be taxed as an S corp. You can only have up to 100 members, and certain types of entities cannot be members of the organization if you elect to be taxed as an S corp. Another thing I do know about S corps too is that, you know, owners have to be paid a salary. So even if it's, you know, $1,000 a month, $500 a month, whatever it is, there needs to be some salary paid to the owner. So there are some limitations that are associated with being taxed as an S corp. But the great thing, again, about LLC is that you have that flexibility, and you can choose how you're taxed. You can choose how it's managed, you know, you can grow as big as you want to grow and not have the formalities associated with a corporation.
So we have someone that just entered the room, and let me give you a scenario. So if I am a entrepreneur that is interested in expanding, and let's say I'm in the healthcare business, you're saying that the LLC is better, but then also should it be a S corp or not for that specific example?
So, I mean, it just depends. You don't have to file as an S corp if you own an LLC. It's going to, you know, you won't be taxed twice if you have an LLC. The income that each owner receives is going to be, you know, reported and claimed on their individual tax returns. So it's not necessary. I think it's just a matter of preference. You know, if you're forming something in the healthcare industry, I guess you can choose whichever, you know, you like. If you think that you're going to have if this is going to grow into a type of company that eventually will go public, and you're going to have you know hundreds of shareholders and that kind of thing, you want to go with a corporation. You want to start with a corporation. You know, but if you're just starting out, you know, an LLC is usually my recommendation for startups, because you have that flexibility, because you don't have the formalities. If you get to a certain point where, you know, you're having, you know, a bunch of investors come into play, then you may want to convert to a corporation, you know, if that suits your needs and the needs of those investors. So I want to briefly go over these case studies. I don't know how much time I have, but I'm nearing the end of the presentation. So basically the cases, just 2 case studies. So basically I just wanted to go over the first one, which is just forming an LLC. You just want to form an LLC to just shield you from, liability. You see a property that you want to, purchase, maybe you want to flip a home, whatnot. And so you just want to form an LLC. And then I'm just going to go over the joint venture structure when you have entities and or individuals who are operating towards a common purpose. That's what a joint venture is. You have 2 or more people operating toward a common purpose. So it doesn't necessarily have to just do with real estate. There can be joint ventures in for any kind of business purpose, to develop an app, to put together, to put on a play. There can be all kinds of, reasons why a joint venture structure would come into play. So for the first one, the case study is forming an LLC. Get this. So this form is best if you are purchasing investment property or loan, or you have a few partners. I call them partners, but it's not a partnership. Remember that. You use that word interchangeably, but you do not have a partnership. So it's best if you're buying it alone, or if you have a few partners. What do? You file the articles of organization, and you list yourself as the authorized member. So in Florida, you file your articles of organization on sunbiz.org. And, within that form, they ask, who are the directors, officers of the organization, and you would list yourself. And if you have another partner, you would list them as well as an authorized member. You want to make sure that you list those owners there because, especially banks, they want to see who has the authority to, open up bank accounts, operate the business, that kind of thing. After you file the articles of organization and they've been processed and filed, obtain an EIN number, employer identification number. You do that with the IRS. You can go on the IRS's website, and apply for a new EIN number, and then boom, you've got your new LLC, and you want to make sure that the LLC is, the one who owns the title to the property, not you yourself. You don't want to be listed, on the deed or anything like that. The LLC needs to own the property. Again, you're shielding yourself liability so that the LLC takes on that liability and not you yourself. If you have another partner, somebody that you're working with in developing this piece of property, you want to make sure that you have an operating agreement for that LLC. The operating agreement is going to talk about, I won't go into depth about this because I don't have enough time, but if anyone has questions about operating agreements and exactly what's included in them, I can answer any questions. You can either put something in the chat or just shoot me an email. But the operating agreement is important because it outlines the interests of each owner, capital contributions, which means the money, essentially it's the money that each person put up in order to purchase the property, in order to operate the business, that kind of thing. And it talks about several other things that, like I said, if you want more information on it, just shoot me an email or put something in the chat. And then operations.
Elana, this is a good point because we'll take a little extra time, because that's how you split up the money. That's how you determine who gets what in the. So if a flipper was to flip a house and they form an agreement with 2 other people that is involved in this deal, will that be in identified how the split works? Will that be identified in the operating agreement or in the joint venture agreement?
It would be identified in the operating agreement because each person would be paid according to their ownership interest. But it also depends on how you're operating, I guess, the business. So if you have multiple homes or that are owned, or multiple properties that are owned by this LLC, you might have one person who's doing the day-to-day operations. You may want to start paying them a salary because they're doing the management. So they would be paid kind of separately, not as an owner. They might be paid a salary for managing, but for paying the owners, how it wouldn't, the operating agreement, it can, but it doesn't necessarily say you have to pay X amount at X time. It can say that, but it's usually not that specific. But it does say that those payments are made in accordance with the ownership interest of each member. And as each person is paid, their what's called a capital account goes, up or down. So capital contribution, let me just go into that briefly. Capital contributions are money that you put in to start the business, to operate the business. So each person puts in, I don't know, 10K or whatnot. So in their capital account, there'll be $10,000. It's not a physical account. It's for accounting purposes. It's an account. So if say for instance you sell a property, well, 10K is a low number, but say you sell a property and you both split 5K, right? So since you both got that's that's a low amount, I guess, but you all split 5K.
Hey, you need to put some zeros behind that woman.
Let's say, you split 10K, so each of you get 5K. So then your capital account would then go down 5K because you've basically been reimbursed. So that capital account is important because if, for instance, you all decided, you know what, we want to dissolve or we want to sell this company, we've been doing really well, we want to sell it, then you would be paid essentially what the amount that you have in your capital account. So if you put more money into it, you had to keep adding to your capital account, then you would essentially be paid that back once the company is sold. So keeping track of those capital contributions is important, and how you do that is outlined in the operating agreement. Okay, so last thing about this case study is the operations. I went over it before, but you want to make sure that you're operating as a legitimate, organized, structured business. Do not commingle your personal and business funds. Get a bank account. Don't pay out of your own personal, your personal cards and things of that nature. Do it from the business account. Again, you do not want someone to come along and pierce the corporate veil. The last case study is forming a joint venture. So usually this is a great way to structure it if you're seeking investment partners. Say, for instance, you don't have the capital, but you're well versed in this type of thing. You think that you can manage this project, but you want to seek other investors who do have the capital. So you want to enter into a joint venture agreement with these investors. The joint venture agreement says we're going to form a new LLC and we're going to operate through that LLC. Excuse me. So, so then you have the newly formed LLC. Now, if you have an instance where you're going to be, well, you anticipate that you're going to be seeking third-party financing, you may want to even form another LLC, which is a special purpose entity, and that sole purpose of that entity is to own and manage the property. So my understanding is that some lenders, they want you to have a special purpose entity that owns the property separate from that parent company because they don't want any potential bankruptcy of the parent company to affect, title, to essentially their collateral. They don't want it to affect that property. So a lot of times they want you to include certain language in the operating agreement that shields that property from, being touched during a potential bankruptcy. And then the joint venture agreement, it's similar to an operating agreement, but it's not the same. But it talks again about those percentage interests. Like I said, forming that LLC, distribution of profits, capital contributions, who manages it, and if you can or cannot transfer, your membership interest. And this last one is just a chart that shows you what I just talked about as far as the joint venture structure. So the operating member would be, could be you if you're the one that's seeking investors. The capital member are the people with the capital, the investors, and together you all form this joint venture LLC, which then owns the special purpose LLC, which owns the property. They have the property manager here because if there is a property manager that needs to be hired or used, that agreement, the property management agreement, would be between them and the special purpose LLC and not your parent company. So I wanted to show you how that structure looked visually so that you could see it. Whoops. Okay. So just to wrap up, forming a business is the best way to go when you're wanting to invest in real estate, because you're shielding yourself from liabilities. You're able to memorialize your agreements with, investors and other third parties as well. You want to do that through your business. You're able to secure financing through your business and essentially create the foundation that you need to build a profitable business. You don't want to do it, through yourself as a sole proprietor. All right, that's it for my presentation. If any of you all have questions, you can go ahead and put the questions in the chat. If you don't have any right now and you think of some later, you can go ahead and shoot me an email. My contact information is at the bottom here. Thank you, David, for having me. And I'm here to answer any questions if you all have any.
Great. We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Would a family member be considered a joint venture? Could a family member be included as a joint venture?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They could be a joint venture member, yes. It does not have to be someone unrelated to you.
Okay. So just to wrap, LLC, well, business, yes, you need a business. LLC, best way to go about it. Operate it as a business account, bank account, credit cards, all of that. Operating agreement if you have more than one person, so you know how the money is split.
Yeah.
And if you can do a joint venture if you are buying a specific thing. Just to be transparent, guys, I have a new construction company, and Elana set it up, and we set it up as a joint venture for specifically building those homes. Is that correct?
That's right.
So that's one way where you can set up and use a joint venture inside of another organization, another LLC for a specific venture, just that one thing that you want to do, as opposed to, if we build another community, that will be another joint venture. But this community or this entity or homes that we're building are operating under one venture. And there's a great way of doing that. The reason why you're doing that is because it separates the two and reduces your liability. Is that fairly a fair assessment?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so put in the brother terms, if someone going to sue a brother, they don't get everything. They don't get all of the pie. They just get that piece of the pie. And that's why you want to have some things separated and make sure you can't pierce that corporate veil, which Absolutely. Is a real thing.
Yes.
I'm not a lawyer. She is. So Any questions?
There are some questions here. Zenobia is saying, should we pay a retainer before moving forward with forming a business structure? I'm not sure what retainer you're referring to. I don't know if that's a question for David or.
No, usually some firms, law firms require you
Oh, you're talking about for a
yeah,
firm.
how about,
Oh,
yes,
okay,
right.
okay. No, for my services, I charge flat fees for these types of services for forming a business. So you wouldn't pay a retainer. You would have a flat fee. You know how much it's going to cost, start to finish, to form the business.
And that's the best way to go about it, because it really is up to the lawyer to do their due diligence, because if they can charge you a flat fee, and then all this some craziness jump up, it's still under the flat fee. So I know that.
Well, hold on. Hold
I
on.
know, I know that's what I
I
did.
didn't say that.
That's what I did, guys. So it, look, when you're talking about legal services, or basically any type of services, you want to get that flat fee if you can. You want to negotiate a flat fee.
That's true. You want to know how much it's going to cost. Even if you can't get a flat fee, it's best to get a range as to how much they think it's going to cost, so that you can budget accordingly. Absolutely. So Tanya Ray, if someone joins later after it's established, how does the agreement apply as far as splitting salary? So I want to make it clear, salary is different from distributions to an owner. So you can pay a salary to an employee, you can also pay a salary to your staff, but that's different from, the owner's distribution. So as an owner, you share in the profit. So if your business, turns a profit, then it's distributed, well, not equally, it's distributed to the owners according to their ownership interest. But the operating agreement does talk about how to add on new members or new owners. So you would comply with how to do that. Usually it's, either majority or all of the other members have to agree to add this particular person or entity. That's usually how it works. But that will be in the operating agreement. So you won't be, just adding them, randomly and not knowing how to go about it. It would be in the operating agreement. Jenny says, is it still possible to move from corporation to LLC? Yes, I believe you can convert. You can convert from an LLC to a corporation to an LLC. If you filed for the, you want to file as an LLC, but you have a corporation, you can convert it. I would just kind of weigh what the cost is. Should you convert it, or should you just go ahead and let it dissolve and start a new one? Just weigh the costs and the fees associated with doing one versus the other. The last one, do we need a real estate license to work in this industry as an investor to hire you? No, you don't need a real estate license to invest in real estate. You can be doing anything and invest in real estate. But if I'm correct, David, in order to, purchase, well, you can use a realtor, right? You need a real estate license if you are helping someone else purchase.
Yeah,
Is that right?
License if you're purchasing and selling yourself. So if you purchase your property and sell your property, you don't need a real estate license.
Right. If you're wanting to assist others with purchasing and selling, then you need a real estate license.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But what most people do, young investors do, investors of all stripes, young, intermediate, and advanced, they work with a real estate agent, because we know the market. At the end of the day, guys, unless you're keeping it as a rental property, and even then you need some probably need to work with an agent. But you need to dispose of this property, meaning that at the end of the day, you need to sell it. And so you need to know the market, and a real estate agent will be able to help you with that. You would want to pick someone that works in that area or knows that area, and so that you would have a better idea of what you should pay for the property. Because remember, you make your money in the purchase, not the sale. So when you if you're working with an agent or someone who is very familiar with that area, they will give you an idea of what you need to pay for the property, how much you need to fix it up, and then ultimately you can reap your profits when you sell the property. But you all that due diligence and stuff like that is what you want an agent to work on, as far as the location, the condition of the home, those type of things. And then also if there's anything associated with the title. A lot of times individual investor, I've seen people lose their fortune or their investment opportunity. A lot of these times, it was one case, the guy bought a barbecue place, believe it or not. They bought it. It was under grandfathered in. Once he did some stuff, all of a sudden, it could not be used as a barbecue place. So that $220,000 that he's put in there to buy this barbecue place, ultimately he wanted to reopen and use it as a barbecue place. He could not. And if that individual would have worked with a competent agent, they would have checked zoning, they would have checked specific use. They would have found out, hey, we couldn't use this as a barbecue place. We might want to find something else. So you definitely want to have as part of your team a finance person. Whether you work with Gilbert or whatever or whomever. You want to have a good lawyer, whether you work with Elana or whomever, and you want to have a good agent, whether you work with me or whoever. You want to have that as part of your team, so that when you buy the property, fix the property up, and flip the property, that you can actually do that and make a profit. Are there any other questions? Well, I got a wow, that makes sense. Yeah, I've been doing this. It's not my first rodeo, mama. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. Thanks, everyone. We have Corner Class Tampa 7 on the first of the month, the first Wednesday of the month. There we're going to be talking about capital. We're going to have another show about how to generate capital for your investment. So whether that is through traditional means or non-traditional means, we're going to talk about that, because there's a lot of ways of getting capital, especially now. And so we're going to cover that, CCT 7. I will see you guys there. Bye.
I don't want to hear you talk about it. I don't want to hear what you're going to do. Ain't it time that you're about it? The more you talk, the more you've got to prove. Don't tell me that you understand it. Don't tell me that I'm too demanding. I need you to show me you're taking this too slowly. Don't tell me that you're what I need, no. I believe that when I see so. Time for you to show